how did you find yourself on the path of traditional Chinese medicine, becoming a doctor? What was that early inspiration to go down this path?
So the inspiration for Chinese medicine school was so when I was 15, on like essentially an outward bound trip to Costa Rica. I don't know if they even have outward bound anymore, but basically I was hiking, whitewater rafting, and sea kayaking for a month in Costa Rica. Amazing. Best time of my life. Totally blew me away. Came back to New York. Grew up in Brooklyn, and I had all of these crazy lesions on my arm and on my face. And so after going to a bunch of dermatologists and a bunch of doctors, finally they biopsied it. And at 15 years old, I get a call from the CDC telling me that I have cutaneous leishmaniasis. So basically, I had a parasitic disease that is carried by sandfly vectors, and they cause these oozing lesions. They can get internal and cause even more havoc. It's mainly found in the Middle East and some other areas, but I was the first diagnosed case out of Costa Rica. So then that sort of led me to, they put me on chemotherapy for that.
Chemo.
Yeah.
I didn't know that you
Now
were on
there's like a
chemo.
topical. Yeah. So I went on home instruction and chemotherapy when I was a sophomore in high school. Went a little crazy. Took a lot of codeine. Enjoyed the codeine. Did not enjoy home instruction, though. It was a fascinating time in my life. And I learned it was like, in hindsight, it was one of those things that really shifted who I was and who I am. And I'm super grateful for it. Even at the time, I remember being like, if this is the cost that I have, even if I die, that trip to Costa Rica was so life-changing that it was worth it. And so in hindsight, this was one of the things that really shifted my life, my trajectory, and my appreciation for this wildlife in a way that I don't know that I would have gotten otherwise. But so it also led me down the road of ecology and evolutionary biology. And so what are we doing to the environment that's shifting disease in society, right? And as I started exploring going to med school or nursing school, really I was seeing that Western medicine is just putting a Band-Aid on top of illness, right? It's not really addressing the root cause of whatever disharmony is causing the illness. It's just saying, here's a pharmaceutical, let's patch you up, let's get you out. Oh, okay, you now have side effects of this pharmaceutical, come back, we'll give you another medication, blah, blah, blah. So when I started looking into Chinese medicine, I started exploring Chinese herbs and realized that Chinese herbs are customizable pharmaceuticals and just how incredibly powerful, safe, and effective they are. And I fully fell in love with that. And
Who introduced you to Chinese medicine?
so my best friend growing up, Allie's mom, Susan, was going through a really brave and brilliant, tough battle with metastatic cancer. And she is one of my heroes and always will be, Susan. And so Susan paid for me and Allie to actually go and get acupuncture to quit smoking when we were in high school. And she had been going to this acupuncturist throughout her 10-year battle with metastatic cancer, while she continued to work the entire time. I mean, Susan was such a legend. And so that was my first experience with acupuncture. I later used it for for allergies, and I got some herbs when I had allergies, and I was like, wow, these are really effective. But when I went to Chinese medicine school, many of the people are really focused on acupuncture, which is amazing. And I love acupuncture. For me, coming from a more Western perspective, I was really drawn to the herbs because not only can we look at the Eastern energetics, but we can look at the Western pharmacological actions too. So it satiated both sides of my brain.
This podcast is brought to you by B Micro, a company I'm deeply passionate about because I founded it in 2018. It's USDA organic freeze-dried microgreens for everyday nutrition and detox. Sprinkle them on any meal or take them as a capsule to enjoy the many healthy benefits. Shop now at bmicro.farm. Use code STEVE15 to save. Yeah, is Chinese medicine better at diagnosing than Western medicine?
It's a completely diagnostic system. So it's interesting because in Western medicine, you can get down to, the minute issue that's going on. So let's use my son Remy for an example. So Remy has a rare genetic disorder called STXBP1, right?
And maybe only 300 people in the world have?
I think now there's like 400 or 500.
That's unbelievable.
But yeah, it's very rare, and it affects the syntax and binding protein in the brain. So it affects how his neurons communicate. right? So Remy wasn't diagnosed till he was 2.5, but he was globally delayed. He didn't even start crawling till he was about 2.5. So I was doing all sorts of research. We were doing, 40, 50, 60 hours of therapy every week since he was 1. I was studying all night long. And his Chinese medicine diagnosis was phlegm misting the mind with liver wind. And so once he got his Western diagnosis of STX-BP1, which required extensive genetic testing to find, his Chinese diagnosis didn't change. So it's like we can find all these minute different pathways and different issues according to Western medicine. So that can be really interesting and really helpful. But it also leaves a huge gap when we're not able to find the cause of what's going on. And it also doesn't honor the ecology of the body the way that Chinese medicine does, if that makes sense. So we see this a lot in women's issues. Endometriosis, for example, the average diagnostic time for endometriosis is 8 to 10 years. So these women are dealing with chronic, severe pain as a result of this very insidious disorder. And yet Western medicine can't diagnose this. In Chinese medicine, if a woman comes to me with endometriosis, she's going to tell me her symptoms and I'm going to give her a diagnosis based on a Chinese medical pattern that is going to address that issue. Can I give a diagnosis of endometriosis? No, we can't diagnose any Western medical disorders and we can't treat any Western medical disorders. But under the Chinese medical diagnosis pattern, we can start addressing that issue immediately.
How does Western medicine look at traditional Chinese medicine?
I think it depends. I think many Western doctors do have an appreciation and a respect for Chinese medicine. It's getting more and more integrated. It's hard because it's a system of medicine that's very difficult to translate into allopathic medicine. So
What's that mean? Allopathic?
like just sort of Western medicine.
Oh.
But so in Chinese medicine, we are really looking at how your body, your mind, your soul, your spirit, everything is working together, right? So again, Western medicine is really looking at like one little segment, one pathway of what's going on. So when we try and bring Chinese medicine into hospitals and stuff like that, then they want to systematize our medicine and say, okay, you're getting these acupuncture points because these acupuncture points have been shown to do X, Y, or Z, which is beneficial for this disorder. In our medicine, if you've really trained as a doctor of Chinese medicine, which takes years and years of training, it's just so much more nuanced than that. It's not, doing these sort of regiments and these schedules don't make sense in our system.
Hey, I just wanted to jump in here and give a quick shout out to the sponsor of today's podcast, B Micro, the easiest way to sneak vegetables into any meal. Due to soil depletion, GMOs, and monocropping, Americans are not getting enough nutrients. So in 2018, I founded B Micro, the first freeze-dried microgreens company in the US to help Americans get more concentrated natural nutrients into their diet. Microgreens are a phase in the plant's life when they're 14 days old and naturally the most concentrated in vitamins, minerals, nutrients, all the good things that we need. Our microgreens are grown here in the US in soil in a greenhouse. They're certified USDA organic and regenerative organic. We grow, wash, and freeze dry them to extend their 1-week shelf life to over 1 year, allowing us to ship anywhere in the US without the worry of spoilage. We have 2 flavors, broccoli, backed by over 2,000 studies on sulforaphane and its powerful detox benefits, and a blend of red cabbage, radish, and broccoli, the most potent detox formula we've tested, offering you the most bang for your buck. Easily sneak these microgreens in any meal. Eggs, smoothies, pizza, pasta, even your kids' mac and cheese, you can't even taste it. Use code STEVE15 to save at bmicro.farm. So you've trained in China.
Mm-hmm.
How do the Chinese think about traditional Chinese medicine? How do the traditional Chinese medicine doctors think about traditional Chinese medicine?
It was interesting because I became pretty good friends with some of the doctors who were training at the hospital that I was at. And a lot of them were just so surprised that Americans were coming over training as doctors of Chinese medicine because for a lot of them, their first choice was to go into Western medicine. So the Chinese medical route for many of the people that I was studying with in China was sort of the backup path. Like they weren't good enough to be Western medical doctors. That was my understanding from a couple of the people that I worked with. So they were very surprised. I think the practitioners who work in it are amazing. I mean, going to the hospital out there and working in the hospital, you just saw things that you wouldn't believe. I mean, stroke rehab in seconds, in terms of getting more mobility from contracted joints, just seizure help, pediatric help. We went to the OBGYN clinic for a week. I mean, we did a bunch of stuff and it was just remarkable. So the doctors who are practicing know the power of it. But I still think that Western medicine has infiltrated the world on such a level that it's become sort of the go-to, the standard, the modern medicine, even though it's killing most of us.
Now, now, why would they want to do? Why would the Chinese want to do Western medicine? Is there more money in it? There's more money selling pharmaceuticals than acupuncture?
Well, there probably is more money selling pharmaceuticals than acupuncture. And I think it's just sort of considered the modern way of doing things. When we were in the hospital, one of the things that I really liked, which I would hope is going to be moved more this way, and I hope that this is how medicine goes, is that it would be sort of integrated. So in the hospital, I was in a traditional Chinese medicine hospital, but they're also giving Western farms and doing Western interventions as well. But what you could do is you could give less pharmaceuticals, you give some herbs, you give some acupuncture every day so that you're getting a little bit of both.